WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Monrovia, 7 p.m. in Cotonou. Good evening and welcome to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Benin's opposition candidate Paul Hunkwe concedes defeat to Romuald Wadani in Sunday's presidential election. Nigerian Air Force commences investigation into civilian casualties following recent military airstrike in northeast Yobe State.
An effective fight against, banditry, insurgents like we've seen in the northeast when our current security formation is demoralized.
Education unions in Guinea threaten April 20 strike over unmet demands.
If we go on strike, it will not be limited to public schools. All private schools will also be shut down.
And Senegal strengthens security in the east as regional threats grow. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Abdullahi Hassan.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Newslink begins with the latest information from Benin as opposition candidate Paul Hunkwe has conceded defeat to Romuald Wadani ahead of official declaration of results from Sunday's presidential election. In a statement released Monday, Hunkwe congratulated Romuald Wadani, who is the chosen successor of outgoing President Patrice Talon. The candidate of Kauri Forces for an Emerging Benin FCBE party acknowledged the growing lead for the presidential coalition's duo. The Electoral Commission has not yet released any figure following the election. Meanwhile, Benin's constitution provides that only the Independent National Electoral Commission, SENA, has the authority to announce official election result. Beninese voters are still awaiting the result of Sunday's poll, which was conducted largely peacefully with no major incidents reported. While we await the official results to be announced by SENA in the incoming days, civil society groups have begun releasing partial assessments of the vote. The platform of civil society organizations in Benin, which established an election observation unit, reported that the voting process was generally peaceful and free from major incidents. However, there are a few isolated incidents in certain localities. Etienne Adosu, a member of the platform's election situation room, has been explaining the findings of the observatory report.
According to the data collected, voting proceeded without interruption in 99.4% of polling stations. The legally required 9-hour voting period was observed in 90.15% of polling stations. Vote counting began immediately after the close of polls and was conducted without interruption, tension or incident in 98.85% of polling stations. The incidents observed include attempts and cases of ballot stuffing and multiple voting involving some voters, electoral officials, opinion leaders, and local authorities. While not exhaustive, the 9-hour voting period was not respected in some polling centers. Security-related incidents were also recorded. The platform is calling on the relevant authorities to take the necessary measures to secure the remainder of the process.
Etienne Adosu is a member of the platform's election situation room in Benin. Elsewhere in the Gambia, domestic election observers have criticized the government's seizure of an alcalo or local chief official stamp in Nyagen village situated in the Central River region. They described this action as ill-advised and unjustified. An alcalo serves as the village head in the Gambia's traditional local governance system. The observers cautioned that this move could disenfranchise eligible voters and are urging the immediate return of the stamp. These concerns were highlighted by the Gambia Participate and the Election Watch Committee during a joint press conference in Banjul. WADR's Sandona Mendy reports.
Domestic election observers say the withdrawal of the Nyagen Alcalo stamp could negatively impact voter registration in the area. According to the groups, the governor of Central Bank region, Osman Ba, withdrew the Alcalo stamp on April 9 after the Alcalo confirmed he had entrusted it to his son. In a separate statement, the government says the stamp has been placed in secure custody to protect the integrity of the ongoing supplementary voter registration exercise, which runs from April 8 to May 21, 2026. Marnyang is the executive director of Gambia Participate.
We state unequivocally that the temporary seizure of the Nyagen's Alcalo stamp is ill-advised, unjustified, potentially a violation of the law, and has the effect of depriving bona fide Gambian residents of Nyangen village their inalienable right to vote. It's also our position that the action of the governor in seizing the Alcalo seal without lawful authority or grounds may constitute a violation of the constitutionally guaranteed rights of bona fide residents of Nyangen who are entitled to vote under the laws of this country.
Meanwhile, Yankuba Manjang, coordinator of the Elections Watch Committee, says,
we are following the process, and for now the most critical bone is on the table is the current Alcalo stamp that we're talking about. And the one part that Mark talked about that I just want to raise concern, which is a big concern for us as observers, beyond the registration that we are seeing, our law is that where you register is where you are going to vote. So these young people in Nyangen, beyond being denied the chance to register in Nyangen, if they are registered in another village.
The groups are now calling on the authorities to urgently return the stamp to avoid disenfranchising voters. They warn the situation raises concern about possible political interference and could undermine confidence in voter registration process ahead of future elections. For Newslink, West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we stream live on WADR.org and at WADR on Facebook and YouTube. To security matters now, the Nigerian Air Force now says it has launched an investigation into reports of civilian casualties following a recent airstrike in Yobe State, northeast. The move comes amid growing concern and outrage over the incident, raising fresh questions about military operations and civilian protection in conflict-affected areas of the country. From Abuja, Echinesa Setu reports.
The Nigerian Air Force says it has commenced a probe into allegations that civilians were killed during an airstrike in Jili, a community in Yobe State. The operation was reportedly targeted at suspected insurgents, but claims of civilian casualties have sparked widespread reactions. A security consultant, Onyekachi Adekoya, says there are underlying factors driving such incidents.
There are a plethora of issues. I don't want to say convenient in supporting narrative that the military are lashing out, and therefore let's call a spade a spade. The government of Borno has designated the area a terrorist enclave and has closed down those markets. Now, if people are there selling and transacting within a terrorist enclave, you can also follow the logic to say they're also selling and aiding terrorism and actions against the state.
Also reacting, security analyst Jonathan Onoja stresses the need to improve the welfare of military personnel.
How do you want to have an effective fight against, banditry, insurgents like we've seen in the Northeast, when our current security formation is demoralized? Only when the troops' welfare is prioritized. Mr. President have done a lot of things. We have seen that. But then, is it getting to the people?
Meanwhile, the medical director of Borno State Specialist Hospital, Shehu Muhammad, says health facilities are managing the injured victims.
So far, everything is available. They've received all the facility that is required. Some will require certain units of blood before even operated. And of course, we have no problem for now.
The Nigerian Air Force maintains that the operation was based on credible intelligence, and findings from the ongoing investigation will guide further action. For WADR, Yechinesa Setu reporting.
Here in Senegal, authorities have strengthened security in the eastern region, particularly in the Saraya area of the Kédougou region, in response to rising regional threats and local vulnerabilities. 3 new support stations for the Rapid Action Surveillance and Intervention Group, known as GASI Sahel, were officially inaugurated in early April. The ceremonies were led by Armed Forces Minister Biram Diop alongside regional officials, military leaders and representatives of the European Union (EU). Sankule Janko tells us more.
These new installations are part of a broader effort to strengthen the security network in southeastern Senegal following earlier deployments in 2025. The region is considered strategic due to its proximity to neighboring Mali, where jihadist activity has been increasing. Recent developments across the border have raised concern. The extremist group for the support of Islam and Muslims affiliated with Al-Qaeda has intensified operations in western Mali, including attacks near border areas close to Senegal. While experts say the group has not demonstrated the ability to carry out attacks in Senegal, its presence continues to heighten tensions among border communities. In addition to security threats, Eastern Senegal faces growing challenges linked to crime, including robberies and cattle theft, as well as the isolation of rural populations. Analysts also point to environmental pressures, particularly in the Bakel area, where gold mining activities are contributing to pollution of the Falémé River affecting local livelihoods. Senegalese authorities say the new Gassi support points will allow for faster response times, improve border surveillance and stronger engagement with local communities.
Sankule Janko with that report. We remain in Senegal because the 6th session of the Joint Cooperation Commission between Turkey and the country concluded last weekend in Dakar. Discussions focused on key issues related to trade, economy and technology. This meeting is part of the ongoing efforts to strengthen the partnership between Dakar and Ankara. Augustine Colley completes the story.
During the 6th Joint Commission meeting, both parties agreed on the need to further diversify trade flows. These include particularly through the promotion of Senegalese products in the Turkish market, the strengthening of local processing, and the encouragement of Turkish investment in Senegal's productive sectors. The main objective is to achieve a more balanced and mutually beneficial trade relationship. During the meeting, experts from both countries established thematic committees and launched sectoral negotiations. Furthermore, the discussions advanced the priorities for economic and trade cooperation while strengthening the convergence of views between Dakar and Ankara. Trade between the two parties saw a marked improvement, reaching over 249 billion CFA francs. This level of trade is considered lower than the ambitions of both countries. In 2022, trade reached a record 261 billion CFA francs, a figure that remains the historical peak of trade relations between Senegal and Turkey.
A report filed in by Augustine Colley. Now to some labor issues. First in Guinea, the Education Workers Union Coalition is stepping up pressure on the government. The coalition is threatening to go on strike from April 2026. However, union leaders are giving authorities a one-week ultimatum to establish an inclusive negotiation framework and to respect the agreement protocol signed on January 3, 2026. Usman Umar has more.
Meeting on Saturday at the Labour Exchange in Kaloum, leaders of the coalition bringing together the FSPE, the Professional Trade Union Federation of Education, and SNE, the National Union of Education, addressed a message to the government and their union partners, including the SLECG. Michel Pepe Balomo, Secretary General of the SNE, presented the key resolutions of the General Assembly.
The first resolution we adopted was to exclude the Free Union of Teachers and Researchers of Guinea from the Education Union Coalition, which will now compromise the FSP and the SUN. We have realized that our colleagues in SLEG are not acting in good faith. They are playing a double game in favor of the government and against the defense of the material and moral interest of teachers. The second resolution is to give the government a 5-day ultimatum from Monday to next Friday. After that, we will meet here for an extraordinary General Assembly, which will decide on the launch of an indefinite nationwide strike from Monday, April 20, 2026.
Union leaders warn that if their demands are not met, the planned strike will be widely observed, with private schools also likely to follow the action.
If we go on strike, it will not be limited to public schools. All private schools will also be shut down.
For now, neither the government nor the Labour Inspectorate has responded to the strike threat in the education sector. However, several voices are calling on authorities to act quickly to avoid disruptions to national examinations.
Usman Umar with that report filed in by WADR's Conakry correspondent, Cherno Alpha Ibrahima Balde. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. We are live online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Benin's opposition candidate Paul Hunkpe concedes defeat to Romuald Wadani in Sunday's presidential election ahead of official results declaration. Nigerian Air Force commences investigation into civilian casualties following recent military airstrike in northeast Yobe State. Education unions in Guinea threaten April 20 strike over unmet demands. Here in Senegal, security has been strengthened in the east as regional threats grow. And still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now turn our attention to Côte d'Ivoire, which has inaugurated a new genetic analysis laboratory in Grand Bassam, marking a major step forward in both judicial investigations and access to DNA testing for citizens. Located within the VTIP Technology Park, the facility was funded by the Ivorian government to reduce reliance on foreign laboratories, speed up analysis, and lower cost for users. Until now, DNA testing, including paternity, had to be conducted abroad, often involving long delays and high expenses. With this new laboratory, services are now available locally, with prices starting at around 250,000 CFA. Christopher Ticho reports.
Officials say the laboratory will serve both the general public and security services. It is equipped to handle a wide range of analysis, from medical requests to forensic investigations linked to criminal cases. The facility operates under the supervision of Professor David T. Oku, with a trained technical team capable of processing biological samples such as tissues, swabs from crime scenes, and trace materials used as evidence. Authorities confirm the laboratory is already operational and has begun examining samples from ongoing criminal investigations. Early analyses have focused on identifying individuals present at crime scenes and establishing DNA matches. According to officials, having this capability within the country will significantly reduce delays for magistrates and families while improving the efficiency of investigations. The move is also expected to make genetic testing more accessible, with standardized procedures now in place for both individuals and judicial authorities.
A report filed in by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston Blay and voiced in our studios by Christopher Aticho. Elsewhere in Liberia, there is a growing concern about the disconnect between higher education outcomes and job opportunities for graduates. This issue will take center stage as the Student Unification Party plans to organize a protest at the University of Liberia on April 14, which is tomorrow. The protest, titled March for Jobs and Justice, will focus on youth unemployment and access to justice. It has garnered support from students of other universities and some high schools across the country. From Monrovia, Abraham Parker reports.
The Students' Unification Party, SUP, a permanent campus-based political movement at the University of Liberia, has officially announced a march for jobs and justice slated for April 14, 2026 in Monrovia. The party says the demonstration is intended to demand urgent government action on unemployment and perceived inequalities in the justice system. The chairman of SUP, Odysseus Moba, emphasized that the protest is a necessary step to amplify the voices of thousands of struggling young Liberians.
Our planned April 14 March for Job and Justice is a non-violent, civil, and constitutional response to the multiplicity of crises in the Republic, including mass unemployment, multi-dimensional poverty, lack of basic services, and the reckless indifference of the criminal cartel of the Bakaku regime.
The Assistant Secretary General of the party, Emmanuel Pole, echoed similar concerns, stressing that unemployment among graduates is contributing to economic hardship and social frustration.
In a society where you have a dominant illiterate population, people look forward to the students for political direction and to guide their path of judgment. So when you have a student telling you that there's no job, ideas about injustice is on the increase, you will see the masses committing themselves to this struggle.
The Students' Unification Party has historically been at the forefront of student activism in Liberia, often championing democratic reforms and social justice. April 14 carries historical weight in Liberia as it recalls periods of student and civil activism, particularly tied to protests, advocating for multi-political parties and democratic reforms. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview segment this evening focuses on Benin as voters are still awaiting the result of Sunday's poll, which is conducted largely peacefully with no major incidents reported. So far, opposition candidate Paul Hunkwe has conceded defeat to Ramod Waldani, the chosen successor of Patrice Talon, the outgoing president, while we await the official results to be announced by Sena. In the coming days, civil society groups have begun releasing partial assessments of the vote. The platform of civil society organizations in Benin, which established an election observation room, reported that the voting process was generally peaceful and free from major incident. Joel Atai Gwetegbe is a member of the platform of civil society organizations. He speaks with WADR on the outcome of the election.
Disons que dans l'ensemble, le calme a été observé.
Overall, things remain calm. It's worth noting that at the end of the day, 2 polling stations in the northern part of the country, specifically in northwestern Benin, were vandalized and claimed as such in a protest. But that's all we know. We were expecting voters to be unable to get to the polls. That didn't happen, so we can be pleased that all eligible voters who wished to do so were able to fulfill their civic duty.
Regarding the ransacking of polling stations in the west of the country, do we know the identity of the individuals behind these acts?
We ourselves had difficulty pinpointing the location. The alert reached us at the end of the election day, practically at the close of polls. We can only interpret this as a desire by some kind of violent extremist or political dissident to make their presence known. Unlike the terrorist attacks that Benin usually experiences or is currently experiencing, there was a simultaneous claim of responsibility similar to the one we saw in 2019 during the legislative elections, which were heavily contested by the opposition who were not among the candidates. Is reminiscent of the clashes that occurred in 2021 during the previous presidential election. But we can understand that despite everything, some political dissidents this time wanted to make their presence known through this channel. We don't know anymore at the moment, and it seems completely isolated. In any case, we have been informed that there were no casualties, nothing but vandalized equipment.
Well, we have also learned that in some areas, observers from the CSO platform were threatened. What more can you tell us?
Yes, but in some places, they became inconvenient witnesses, especially once they began resisting attempts at bribery, ballot stuffing, or the subversion of established rules. We witnessed instances of subversion of these rules, which aren't entirely unprecedented, but their skill and the fact that they began very early, even before the polling stations opened, and escalated were striking. Was it because people were determined to improve voter turnout, a theme that was quite prominent throughout the campaign? Was it the desire of concerned voters to fulfill their civic duty as early as possible before going about their daily activities, such as working in the fields or perhaps attending religious services? It's possible that in some communities, there was significant pressure to vote en masse, to vote as early as possible. But this seems to us to be against the law. And so, as our observers were identified as troublesome witnesses, as people resisting the proposed orders, yes, if only by the fact that they were using an Android device, and this isn't new, they began to be targeted. Therefore, we generally advised them to withdraw from these areas, to call the police and local police stations, and to provide them with all the necessary assistance.
Les forces de l'ordre, les commissariats dans ces zones à leur apporter toute l'assistance requise.
Joe Atai Kutegwe is a member of the platform of CSOs in Benin. In the sporting world, a Ghanaian footballer, Dominic Frimpong, has been killed during an armed robbery attack on his club Berecom Chelsea's team bus. The incident occurred on Sunday as the team was returning from a Ghana Premier League match, with gunmen reportedly ambushing the bus between Gwasu and Bibiani. According to the club, armed assailants opened fire, forcing players and staff to flee into nearby bushes for safety. The Ghana Football Association confirmed the death of the 20-year-old, describing him as a promising talent and expressing deep sorrow over the loss. Authorities say steps will be taken to strengthen security for teams traveling for domestic matches. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umu Daniego for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English, and stream live at WADR.org. I am Abdullahi Hassan. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about